Hello, everyone. So I pre-recorded what you're about to see, the first part of what is now going to become a series podcast regarding the community that I just left, the Tori Says community. I'm It has been a very interesting experience over the last couple weeks since I've left, and the last couple years since I've been a part of this community. And the reason it's taken me so long to come out with all of this information is because every day I learn new things. Every day I put pieces together. Every day I think a little bit differently than I did the day before. So I'm definitely giving myself time and space to kind of gather information and allow God to show me kind of everything that I just experienced. And I'm also still a part of this community as far as the people go, not so much the structure of it, but the actual people. And I want to be respectful to them because I love them. They have good hearts. And I'm really grateful to have them in my life. So I'm kind of trying to figure out the best way to do this. So in the part that I'm going to share right after this intro, I recorded an hour and 20 minutes or so of me telling my full story as it pertains to this group, as well as some of the cults I was in the past. Because some of you don't know me, I'm going to get some first time listeners, and I want to make sure that I kind of set the precedent to lead you up into who I am and what got me to this place. Um, I did record a second half that things have been uncovered that I know now that I decided to scrap that. So right now, this is just part one, and more is going to be coming out in the future. I feel very strongly on my heart that I play a role in this somehow. I don't know where this will lead, but in uncovering some of the lies and the manipulation tactics that I experienced while being there, but I'm still coming out of that place. So as I'm working through my own stuff individually with God's help, I'm also connecting with other people who are helping to put together pieces of the puzzle, and I'm seeing a bigger picture. So I want to make sure that I put this out in parts so it will grow and evolve over time. I planned initially on this being a one and done kind of here's my story about this crazy situation I was in. But I'm seeing that the rabbit hole runs quite deeper than even I realized. And I have to be careful about how I disseminate this information because people are involved, and I want to make sure I protect everyone's anonymity and their lives. I'm not saying their lives are in danger, but I am saying that there has been a lot of um, things that I've been made aware of that have happened behind the scenes that, let's just say, it's worth protecting people. That's it. I do plan on, at this point in time, should they not back out, having some interviews in the future from whistleblowers within this community who have information that will be helpful. And for my regular listeners, you might want to just skip over these episodes unless you're interested, because it's really geared towards the people specifically who understand this dynamic of the Tori Says community. I'm not trying to separate anyone from Tori. I'm not trying to get anyone to do or believe anything. I'm simply just bringing my experience as I recall it to the best of my knowledge so that others can make informed decisions. Because one thing I noticed when I was in this community structure, I had a lot of questions and red flags that I was ignoring. And recently, those questions are being answered. And everything I was confused about is now starting to make sense. So I'm going to try to do this the best way that I can. This is an intro to the previously recorded. I hope you guys get something out of it, enjoy it, share it. I also wanted to use this time to say that if you are a part of this community, an ex-member of this community, an admin, an ex-admin, a member who has experienced any of these things or things that I don't mention, please feel free to reach out to me on Telegram. My handle is @truthhurts. TruthHertz. I'll link it below. Or on Instagram, my handle is @AshleyJoe111. I'm here to talk. I'm willing to give you a platform. I'm willing to protect your anonymity if you choose. If you'd like to show your face, that would be even better. But I'm going to be respectful of anyone who comes to me. Many people have up until this point. So anyway, this is my introduction, and I hope you guys enjoy. Welcome back, everyone, to Into the River after a very long break. Anyone that listens to my podcast knows I take breaks. This one was exceptionally long. I've been caught up in a lot of things, preoccupied, but that is part of what I'm going to discuss on this podcast. So this is my first time doing a solo with video, so hopefully I'm not too nervous. It's a little out of my element, but we're just going to roll with it because I do have a new YouTube channel. I have been trying to upload more recent videos on when I have the chance. So the topic today is one, I want to kind of go back in time and just look at the last 3 years for me and kind of sum up a real quick story of what I've experienced and been through for those who might be new to the podcast. The other thing I want to discuss is the community that I recently came out of that I have alluded to a bit. For those of you who follow me on Instagram or who have listened to this podcast, you've heard me refer to this community many, many times. And I recently left the community somewhat. And I would like to kind of dive into that entire experience and what it was like. One, so that I can get it all out there for anyone who's willing to listen, but also because I think it's relevant. And I think that there's lessons that I learned through that experience that will apply to a lot of people's lives, especially if you find yourself in a group dynamic for any purpose, whether it be religious or political or whatever. There's certain things that I want to speak to that I think everyone could potentially benefit from. So for those who are new, I'm just going to start off with saying that I have been in multiple cults before the age of 23. And those of you who listen to my podcast are aware of this, but I'm going to very quickly sum up some of that experience because I think it's very relevant. The first one, well, let's just go back and say that I found God at a very young age on my own. And it was a deeply personal experience. I wasn't brought to God by adults. God came to me as a child and I felt his presence and I had a desire to know him and to be in a relationship with him. And it was a very, very special, unique love thing that I was in with God. Eventually, my parents turned somewhat religious. We found churches. And as I was in my teen years, the church that we were in turned out to kind of change over the years and become a very legalistic church. There was a lot of rules imposed, a lot of new things that they were adding in. You had to sign a membership agreement. You had to agree to certain things. Obviously, they couldn't enforce these things, but we would all abide by them. Some of them being, you weren't allowed to date people without a chaperone. You weren't allowed to kiss the person you were dating until you were married. You weren't allowed to be alone with them. Just a bunch of weird stuff like that. And then some more legalistic stuff. This church slowly over time segregated away from their bigger affiliation. I think it was an open Bible, and got to the point where they were completely on their own. Basically no accountability whatsoever. It was just like the pastor was the only one with no one to kind of check in on us and see if, he was abusing power or whatever. For whatever reason, I'm not assigning blame to any of these people in this video. I'm essentially just spelling out my experience. So for whatever reason, this person ended up doing as a lot of pastors do and sharing their version of God with us. And one very strong message that came out, because I was so interested in this man and his message, because he was a beautiful speaker, extremely wise. I absorbed everything that came from the pulpit. And one of the things that came from the pulpit that was very heavy, that attached itself to me for a very long time, was guilt, shame, blame, a feeling that I was not good enough, a sense that God was always forgiving me. And the only time I was really right with God was after basically being on my knees at the altar every Sunday, begging for forgiveness for being such a disgusting piece of creation. And it really started to drive a wedge between me and God. So eventually I rebelled, I left, and My parents were a few years behind me, and we kind of got out of that situation. Um, I ended up going into a rehab. Well, I say the word rehab lightly because it was a church community in Los Angeles, and it was a mega church that had a program called the discipleship. And the discipleship was supposed to be for people who are coming off of drugs and alcohol to come and spend a year of their life in this program and basically get their life right with God, get over their addiction issues, whatever. So at the age of 21, I went into this community and I did a year in this discipleship program. One thing, this was very different from my other church. So this mega church was bringing in millions and millions of dollars. And I was basically with all these women. There was about 30 of us, give or take, and like 150 men. And we weren't allowed to speak to anyone during the entire year except for those people directly over us as leadership. We weren't allowed to speak with men for an entire year. We weren't allowed to go anywhere alone. We always had to have people with us. We wore the same black t-shirt every day that was usually stained with bleach because every day we were the free help to clean the mega churches, office spaces, work areas, all of that. So we weren't taught anything about addiction or helping us get through that. There was no kind of therapy or counseling or anything. It was essentially just go to church a whole bunch. So we were going on Wednesday, we had a Tuesday night thing, we had a Sunday thing, we had all of these church services that we're going to. And the rest of the time we're cleaning and we're working. The men were cleaning the grounds of the community, the women were cleaning the floors and the bathrooms and all of that. So in that time, I would start to question some of the things because, as we all know, in every situation, there tends to become a hierarchy. You see egos get involved, you see people have their own personal feelings and issues that come out on you. So I would notice some things that felt wrong to me, and I would call them out when I saw them. And this would get me in trouble. And that would result in me getting what they called hours, which means, like, let's say I think I had over 100 hours in the year that I was there. And hours are basically, you would get 5 hours if you left your fan on in your bedroom, or if you didn't make your bed properly or whatever, or you did something worse, like had attitude with leadership. And these hours would result in, when everyone else had free time, you were isolated. You either had to sit in the hallway by yourself and read your Bible, or you had to go dig a hole and fill the hole up, or go clean the stairwell with a toothbrush, or whatever it is. You had to work off your hours somehow. So this situation is very interesting because I was starting to see in my hours, which was a very isolating, difficult time for me, God shining through in my life. And one of the ways he did this was in the Bible, because I'm sitting there with all of this time to just read the Bible for hours and hours and hours, or I'd be cleaning and Jesus would be ministering to me while I was on my hands and knees trying to get a stain off the floor or scrubbing a stairwell with a toothbrush. And in these moments, I was communicating with my creator once again. He was showing me things in the Bible, like Stephen, who spoke out against authority and ended up becoming a martyr. And he was showing me the hypocrisy in the church that I was literally existing around. I'm watching millions of dollars funneled into this church where the pastor couldn't even get his own gas. He had a servant who would do it for him. These people are living like royalty, and we are literally on our hands and knees in shame, only paraded up on stage when they needed to bring in more money, where we would share our testimony, tell whoever how much the mega church had helped us. And then we would go back to our little hole in the ground. Literally, we were living in a basement. So in this time, God's showing me the hypocrisy. He's showing me the juxtaposition between who he is and the environment that I'm in. And ironically, when I look back on this situation, it's one of the most powerful times in my life. 21 years old, struggling with addiction issues, flying out to California from Illinois and just giving a year of my life to sobriety, to scripture, not really knowing what was next. God did so much in my heart in that time. And I can't give credit to any one person around me. There was a lot of obstacles. I had a lot of attitude issues, and I was extremely rebellious in that I didn't accept anything blindly. I asked a lot of questions, and this was very much frowned upon in the previous church and in this situation. And God started to meet me where I was, and it was a really beautiful thing. After a year in that cult, church, mega church, discipleship program, I ended up staying for a few more months where you kind of get more freedom, you get a roommate, things started to get a little better. I ended up having sex with one of the millionaire's sons who was constantly pursuing me. We weren't allowed to date or have sex or anything for a year after the program. And he pursued me until finally it happened. And then I finally came clean with some people, and it got out what had happened. And they promoted him to a position of higher, like he went to work directly with the pastor and got this position in his office. He was also promoted to the worship team. And I was told to go back to the quote rehab for a year for having sex. So here's a situation where a girl, barely 22, coming out of a year-long rehab, ends up doing the same thing that this man does. I was essentially the vulnerable person in this situation. He was the pursuer, the predator, and he knew the rules, but he constantly worked at me until I, of course, willingly complied because I liked him, and he gets promoted and I get punished. The punishment does not match the crime. Having sex should not land you a year in rehab in any sane world, but in this situation, that is what happened. I was so in love with God that I thought complying with this punishment was what he wanted from me. So I made the decision to go back to the rehab. And I believe I was there for a few weeks. I can't remember exactly. And it was interesting because I had been sober for almost a year and a half at this point, and I'm in there with heroin addicts coming off of Skid Row. And I'm basically helping everyone in the house. I'm just there to guide them, encourage them, give them hope. And even the leader that was there, who originally didn't like me, when she saw I came back and the role I was playing in helping, her respect level for me grew. And she was pretty much frustrated with the way that it was handled. So one day, I have to say quickly, this man who I slept with told me before I went into the program that he was going to write a book someday about women and what kind of women were wife material, and that I was not the type of woman that was wife material because I was willing to have sex with him, and that a real wife material would have waited and would have been something worth waiting for. So I'm dealing with that damage. I'm dealing with that humiliation and that shame from this rich man's son. And then I go back into this program. About 3 weeks later or so, I was at church on my knees, on my face at the altar in a black t-shirt soaked in bleach. And I'm crying, praying for God to give me strength to get through another year of rehab for my sins. And I look up and I see him, the man, standing there with a microphone in his hand and nice clothes, singing to a mega church of people behind me. And God literally was like, go. So I stood up, I walked to the back, I came to the woman who was my quote leader at the time, and I said, I can't do this, I'm going home. And she goes, honey, I understand. Good for you. I walked out the door, met some friends. They happened to be outside, which was perfect. We spent a beautiful day hanging out, went to a hill overlooking the city. There happened to be fireworks that night. It was beautiful. My parents got me a plane ticket to head out the next day, and I was on my way. At that point, I am living in Illinois, 22-ish, I think 22 or 23 at this point, living in Illinois with my parents, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother. And we had a few months together, a very special time. I was very lonely. I was very struggling because I came home trying to not be back in the party life, but also struggling really hard with addiction, depression, all of that. I started working in an addiction clinic, which was interesting. I enjoyed it, but the depression was still really heavy for me. MySpace was around at that time, and I was online. I ended up meeting a man, or reconnecting to a man that I was friends with, kind of knew him as an acquaintance growing up. And he was telling me that he lived in Nashville, and there was a community there of people who were trying to save the world, essentially, by moving to other countries permanently to help with real things like helping create water systems for um like irrigation systems for people who struggle to have water, or helping women have and childbirth and stuff like that. So these people were going, yes, they were Christian based, but they were like different than the Christianity that I had been raised around. They were more progressive. They had some progressive views, and they really were humanitarians. And I was very excited about this idea. I wanted to do something that mattered in my life. I didn't want to just exist in this old town I lived in where I wasn't really hanging out with anyone because all my friends were still in the scene. So I ended up going down to visit and finding this beautiful community of people who were doing all of this work in Nashville. And they were helping people who had low income, cleaning their houses, ridding. I remember working in this man's house who was disabled, and there was millions of cockroaches everywhere. And I remember cleaning his house and just feeling God and saying, okay, yes, I want to be a part of this. So I ended up moving to Nashville to join this cult. And I can now say it's a cult. I have been able to say that for a while now. And this church was cool because everyone was young. They were my age. I felt like I finally found like my tribe, my people. They were passionate, they were fun, they were cool. They weren't like anti-drinking and stuff. They were normal. They weren't super legalistic Christians. Um, and it was kind of beautiful at first. We were studying the Bible in a way that I had never studied the Bible. And the leader was this young, hip dude that came from California and went to all these awesome schools and was very progressive. And I was just kind of like infatuated with his mind. And everyone was. We were all just like, he's so intelligent, he's so incredible. And we were learning all of these things. And then I started to take a class, the Bible as literature. And as I'm taking this incredible class in this semester, I'm noticing hypocrisy all around me yet again. New people would come in, and if they weren't cool enough or whatever, they were deemed as a problem. They were treated horribly. They were outcasted. They were gossiped about. And it really bothered me. I've always been someone to stick up for the underdog. It's really been never in my nature to attack someone who's vulnerable, especially someone who's alone. It just feels like one of the worst things you can do as a person. So I was seeing this community that should have been bringing these people in with love just be really nasty and cliquey about everything. And I would call it out. I That's a theme. I would basically ask in these private groups, like, hey, because I was deemed cool. I mean, they loved me. I was like one of the few unchurched, or most of the kids came just from church. They would get them at these like youth leader events and these little youth group things. And I came in with the past, with history, with a little bit of grit. Like, I was not your average kid right out of the church. I had experienced some shit in my life, and I had a story which made me appealing to the leader. He was like, you're the kind of person we need, someone real, someone who, I think he was kind of bored with the mindless followers he had. And I was fun until I wasn't, until I started asking questions, until I started calling out him. Until I started calling out some of the cliques that were happening and that we weren't really embodying the message we were saying we were. There was some weird stuff with money that happened that had me questioning. And then I started to become the outcast. I was clearly seen as untouchable. Don't talk to her. The girl that asks questions, the girl that calls things out. And I ended up, you know, just isolating myself and still going to classes. But I got a job at a hotel. I was working triple shifts. I was making killer money. I was never there. And I was spending the time that I was there alone in my room in a depression, essentially. The cool thing about this story and why I'm telling it again is because while I was at the Bible as literature class, God showed up in a huge way and was showing me things through the teaching of the school in the Bible that I had never seen before. Elements of the nature of God. I was reading the book of Hosea. I was seeing different things that I had never understood from the Christian perspective about God. And it was starting to blow my mind and ironically show me the hypocrisy in the place that I was at. So as this is happening, I'm having a bit of a reawakening in my faith, but also it's pushing me further and further away from religion. And it ended up pushing me completely out the door. I started to realize some things. It just wasn't right. And ultimately, I was like, I'm going to be bad for this place because I'm not going to change and I need to go. So I ended up leaving. And the reason I share those three stories is they're very relevant to this story. I just wanted to give a foundation for those who haven't heard. It comes into play with the experience that I just went through. So fast forward to 2020. I woke up. I was a very liberal person, not political so much, had never voted in my life. And I saw everything going on in the world very clearly. I told my dad in December of 2019, because I get premonitions about the coming year. I have for the last 5 years or so. I kind of like get a feeling of what's to come. And I told my dad it was about clarity and it was about clarity of sight specifically, that we were going to have like 2020 vision in 2020. Then 2020 happened and it's like my eyes were wide the fuck open. I have never had such a drastic shift in perception as I did in 2020. And a lot of people relate to that. It's just everything was wrong. I knew it in my spirit. I knew it on every level. Everything was wrong. You guys know that story. I've shared it before and Against the Grain, but I ended up having my awakening. And that led to the next 2 years of, figuring it out there helping. I was in the world doing the best that I could. I was working at the stores at the time as a wine rep. So I'm doing my job, but I'm also fighting against the stuff. Like I'm going to the managers of the stores that wouldn't allow me inside without a mask. And I'm making them meet me at the door. And I'm saying, I won't come in. I can't service your store unless you understand that this is not a law. This is a mandate. There's a difference. And if you can't respect my decision and I can't come in, I want to help you, but you need to help me. And I was getting a lot of understanding, but a lot of fear from people. So they couldn't really change things. And I watched it all happen. I watched the unfolding of it. And on my breaks, I would go sit in the park and collect petitions and signatures for the Gavin Newsom recall. I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew that I had to do something. And I was on my own. I would come home, struggle with it, whatever. It led to me quitting my job over mask mandates. My company eventually forced a vaccine, so I would have been quitting in the long term anyway, but that happened. And then I gave myself fully to devoting my time to this situation we're all in and learning, researching, and sharing. So I started sharing heavily in 2020 on my social media, everything. And it led to a lot of reactions, a lot of new friendships, whatever. You guys know the story. So around that time, I found all these communities online, in Instagram specifically. That's the only social media I was on. And they were all kind of like awakened people / people who liked Q / people who just saw the truth. Some people have been aware of this stuff for like 20 years and we're just like, oh my God, you guys are here. We're so happy. So I became a part of this movement and this awakening that led me to so many friendships and it was so amazing. But I noticed in Instagram, the group started to get really weird after a few months. And there started to be some strange infighting over like really stupid shit, like who to trust, who not to trust. Like I remember there was a whole General Flynn versus Lynn psyop. I'm pretty sure that's still happening. I see it every once in a while. And I started to watch everyone turn on each other. People were like hooking up with each other who had wives and husbands, and like it turned into this whole fucking thing that I was just like, this is a little nuts. I was also noticing, and I've discussed this in the past, the Q community and how ridiculous that got. I really, really didn't. I fell for it briefly. So I have to take ownership over that. And that's an embarrassing time in my life. And I'm not saying the Q stuff, but the people talking about it, but a little bit of the Q stuff too, I have an issue with. So I ended up falling for it briefly, but then kind of realizing, wait, this is bullshit. Everyone is literally taking from this. Trust the plan. Get your popcorn. This is all a movie. Sit back, do nothing kind of mentality. So regardless of the intention of Q, I saw the fruit of it, which was not good. It was stagnation. It was this idea that someone was going to save us. There's these white hats in the background that are doing this work, and you don't have to worry about it kind of thing. And that just didn't resonate with me because I knew it was up to us from day one. So I started unfollowing a lot of those people because they were really out there in the way that they were thinking. And I didn't like the way I felt around that community. I wanted to be around grounded people who were just doing stuff. Kind of weeded that out in my life. Ended up finding this community of Tori sets. And that's kind of what all of this has been leading up to, is my experience in this community. So I first came across Tori, I want to say mid to late 2020. And I would just listen to her shows from time to time, but I wasn't like lock in. I think I found her through the Shadowgate documentary. And we just started listening here and there. And then I fell in love with her as a teacher. Definitely one of the most brilliant minds I've ever encountered in my life. Her ability to teach, it's almost like a multidimensional style where she is coming at it from so many different angles all at once, putting pieces all over the place, where over time, after listening for some time, you start to see a whole picture, but it's almost interactive because you feel that you helped put the pieces together. So therefore, it's not like she's just spoon feeding you this stuff. She's basically giving you a trail with breadcrumbs to walk down to put together. And it becomes, like I said, interactive. It's like a choose your own adventure kind of experience. For me, at least it was. So you feel very personally involved in the Tory community. I wasn't a part of the community at this point. The first almost year, I think I listened to her. I wasn't a part of her Telegram community, nothing. I was just listening to her shows. At the time, they were 2 to 3 hours, Monday through Friday, every day. And then there was a movie night on Twitch. And then occasionally there'd be another pop-up show or whatever. So I would say it was almost like a part-time job, just listening to her. And it was beautiful because not only was she reaffirming things that I knew and taking it so much deeper, she was also teaching me things I did not know, as far as historical stuff in a real context that we don't get taught in schools. And then geography, geology, astrology. I don't want to say astrology, but basically metaphysics, quantum stuff, mathematics, like everything that was sparking in my brain. Like there's certain episodes that I think back on to this day that completely changed my life. Her quantum episode is so good. She's done some stuff that touches on divine mathematics. I really love those. Yeah, it was quite the experience. And then not only are you having this incredible, eloquent teacher who has this wide array of knowledge, but she'll jump on a locals or she'll jump on a stereo chat. And then you feel like you're talking to your best girlfriend. She's literally like talking about shoes and clothes and just being herself. And so you feel this sense of like, oh my God, this incredible person I respect and admire so much is also just a normal person like me. And like, to back up a little bit, introduction to her, for those who I haven't shared this specifically with, she is essentially a whistleblower who worked for John Brennan and has been kind of brought up since childhood to work for the agencies. I'm not exactly sure one. I never really got a full grasp on what her specific position was, but it required her to work all over the world. It required her to help rig elections for multiple countries. She has gone undercover and what's the word? Costumes and disguises as men, as women, as other people. I don't know the extent of it. Whatever it is, it's super secretive. And she's essentially saying that she had a come to Jesus moment of sorts, a wake up moment of her own where she realized she reached a limit of what she was willing to be involved in. She realized how bad what she was involved in was, and she decided to be a whistleblower and to blow the lid off of everything. And she calls this her time to basically find redemption. That the road that she has been on for the past many years has been seeking redemption to make herself right for all the things that she has done. And I sincerely believe that that is where her heart is and what her desire is. So that's Tori in a nutshell. It's really, really hard to completely encompass her, but I wanted to do justice to some of the beauty from my perspective that I've seen from her as a teacher in the last couple years. So about a year-ish after listening to her, my boyfriend had found the Telegram community and he was really active in it. I was still active on Instagram. I was doing how-to videos for how to dig for data on the medical websites, how to find journals in medical journals. And I was calling my representatives for the first time ever and making lists and going down the list when new bills were coming up that I opposed or that I agreed with. And I was showing little how-to videos on Instagram about how to do that because I was nervous. And I felt like if I was nervous, someone else was nervous, and we'll do it together for the first time. Share your video with me. I'll share mine with you, trying to build some momentum and get people involved. I also was learning how to write letters for the first time. I was learning how to, just dig for information, to verify sources, to find things out on my own, little things that most people didn't know how to do, like go to the CDC website and navigate it and actually find the data and get past the first couple pages of just weird headlines and shit. I was learning how to do all of these things. And I was trying to share the knowledge that I had with people because I desperately just wanted people to wake up and then do something, get involved. So he's in the Telegram community and I'm still doing my thing, making videos, talking to people, building relationships. I started a podcast. I'm starting to have really good conversations with people that needed to be had, that I needed to have, that others needed to hear, to make them understand that they weren't alone in this. And at some point, I ended up jumping in the community and jumping in my state group. So the Telegram community is almost the opposite in some ways of everything Tori is or comes across as. She has a community where she has a main page where she posts herself, and then there is a chat in association with that. That's how the Telegram channels work. You can connect them to a chat. So her main channel has like 50,000 followers. Then her chat has like 20,000 some people, give or take. And the chat's just the overflow where everyone discusses things. I didn't get in there for quite a while, but I did get into my California room. So there's 50 staterooms, one for each state. And then there's all of these countries that have a Tori Says Telegram channel where they're doing work, they're getting things done, they're sharing news, whatever. I don't know what happens in all of them. All I can speak to is California. So I joined this channel finally. My boyfriend had been there pretty much since the inception of it. And I come in a very, very locked down state. And the first thing I felt when I got in the room was the energy in the room. It's like, I don't know why I felt the energy as though it was a real room, but that's what it felt like to me. It felt like how California is in the country. It felt like that on Telegram, where I had seen other chats in Telegram of like freedom fighters or, people in the awakening, and it felt different. It was just kind of like people hanging out and sharing info, and everyone was kind. This felt dark. It felt like suffocating, I guess, like almost like all the windows were shut and it was super stuffy in there. And like the first feeling I had in my mind's eye was to open windows. Like, we need to open windows and get some fresh air in here. This place feels like it's run by Gavin Newsom. And I'm not putting that on any particular person. I'm just saying that was the energy in the room. As I do, I immediately was like, what's up with this shit? Why is it so fucking weird in here? Like, why are you guys repeating the same shit over and over to new members? Why are you talking this way? Like, why are you very robotic and like controlled in the way that you're communicating? Like, it's gross, right? And yeah, I ended up leaving, I think shortly after, because I was like, this is stupid. And I guess my first instinct was probably right all along. But eventually I came back in a couple months later, gave it another go. Was met with some kindness, but again, like, saw the issues happening again. There was a lot of rules in place about how you could talk, what you were allowed to say, what you were allowed to share. A lot of people weren't talking. It was very controlled. So I noticed this again, and I end up sending a video to the admins of the group at the time. So each state group has like a group of admins that were involved in like a big all state admin chat. And I don't really know what the role of admins in this community is to this day, even though I've been an admin twice. Usually it's just to help people, but this is different in the way that it feels like a power position in Telegram. So I reached out to all the admins because I would see them treat people like they were not real or like they were suspect or whatever. And I was just like, this is so stupid. So I send a video because that's how I talk. I just throw myself out there. And I send a video to all three of the admins basically saying, hey, my name's Ashley. This is my Instagram. I'm a real person. So here you go. I'm not fake. I'm not whatever. Like, what's up with the way you guys are treating people? Like, the second they come in, you basically berate them, and like then they end up leaving or you boot them out. And like, why are we doing this to people? Like, some people don't check their phone that much. Like, can we just chill? Can we just chill a little bit? Like, you can go verify who I am. I'm real, like everybody else is. And it was met with, I don't know, they were kind. They liked it. I don't know why. And I was like, okay, well, and then it seemed to get slightly better. Well, then there was a situation that came up right after I sent that video of someone who was one of the admins of the group had started a GoFundMe at some point, or not GoFundMe, but some kind of a fundraiser for a billboard, because we were going to put a billboard in California. Never got to the actual stage of putting a billboard in California, but this was before I came. My boyfriend knows more about it and filled me in, but essentially they were raising money to put some kind of a billboard in California to raise awareness about something. I don't know the details. I think $4,000 was raised and nothing ever came of it. And no one knew why. And months had gone by and people were apparently asking about it before I got there, and no one really understood what was going on. So when right after I sent this video to them, someone who had been there for a while reached out to the room like, where's the money? What's going on? And so this thing starts. And this admin is skirting the issue, is blaming the girl for asking the questions, starts to lose his shit, get all angry, instead of just giving the answer because he was the one heading it up, of what happened to the money. Where's the money? Yeah, turned into a shit show. Well, then in a whirlwind, two of Tori's direct admins came to me and basically was like, do you want to be admin of California? I'm like, okay. I think I had been there like a month. It was crazy. Like, I didn't really even know this group, hadn't proved anything to them. They didn't know me, but they picked me out of a hat. And they said, I saw your video and I liked it. You seem like a cool girl. I'm like, okay, sure. Well, then they selected another woman. And then they brought us in a secret room and they told us we were going to get rid of these two people, the ones that we were kind of pushing back on, which the one has nothing to do with the billboard, but was just an asshole. And the other one, I don't know. So all of a sudden, all I know is they're going to get rid of them as admins and they want us to take their place. And we're the two ones raising concerns. And I thought at the time, it's weird because I'm kind of trouble that they would pick me, but maybe they love transparency. That's awesome. I like transparency in a community. This is new for me to find people that actually appreciate that. So they get us in this super secret chat and they basically fill us in on all of these things with this person and this billboard. And they're like, it's all his fault. And he got into a contract that was way bigger than it should have been, I believe. And I don't remember exactly, but it was, I think, over $20,000. He accidentally signed up for this crazy amount, or maybe just believed that we could raise it. And instead of telling the room, he just made that decision with these other admins. And before you know it, California is locked into a $20,000+ contract and nobody knows anything about it. All we know is that we've raised $4,000 and nothing has come of it. So they fill us in, but they're not giving us all the details very simply. And it's hard. We're just like basically pulling teeth to get this story, because I'm in there now and I'm like, well, the room hasn't had answers for months. It's time to tell the full truth. And I felt responsible as a new admin to give them the entire story. So it took days of pulling teeth, trying to get the information out of these people. Like, you've known all along. You've never showed up. You've watched the room fight about this money many times. You've watched no one get answers, and you've known the answers, but you're not giving them. What's going on? So finally, we kind of get a story, even though it's really weird the way it was put together. It was like missing things. It just didn't feel like cohesive. But we're like, okay, we'll do our best to like make a story out of all the garbage you guys just told us and share it with the room. And we did. And it was essentially what I just told you guys. There was a mistake. He over promised, and they were trying to protect him. But then they were also telling us how he's the bad guy and he's the real problem. And it's very strange that he's the bad guy and he's the real problem. And he got us into this contract and never told us about it, but they didn't tell us and they kept him as admin. Interesting. Anyway, so we give the room a little bit of, whatever. And then we go about our merry way. Everyone's like, some people are pissed. Some people are like, it is what it is. Let's let it go. Let's forgive it. So we move on from the billboard situation. Well, then I'm new admin. There's 4 of us. One had been around since forever. 2 of us are new. And the 4th is someone I don't know. He's very quiet, has very little time to be around, apparently, is what he said. And so we're in this situation. And Tori's main admin is calling me on the phone, and we're having little group calls, and it's like we're best friends right away. She's telling me very intimate details of her life that were actually not my business, but I don't know. I felt like I made a friend. I was brought into all this love. And she told me how much she thought I was a cool girl and all this shit. So I'm getting this like love and like friendship from these women I've never met. And I'm also being told all of these things about other people in our stateroom and who's bad and why they're bad and that they're an infiltrator and they're this. So I'm being fed with a lot of bullshit, and I'm starting to get a little paranoid. I'm like, whoa, I didn't realize our community was so infiltrated. I'm brand new. So I start thinking that everyone's bad, and they're telling me who's bad. They're like, the whole group in San Diego is essentially an infiltration group, and and to be fair, this will make more sense in a minute. They are doing the most as far as organization and activism and work, as far as a group in the state of California than anyone, and not just within the Tori Says community, but San Diego in general is on fire. I actually started seeing people from San Diego doing things before I found Tori, just on Instagram, because they are being very vocal and filing a lot of lawsuits and doing things. So anyway, this group gets targeted as all bad. So I start to believe that anyone from that group is there just to disrupt and to thwart our efforts. And I believed it. And I started to look into people, like, who's bad? What are they doing? Like, I spied on people's Instagram. I found them. I was looking for dirt on them. I was constantly being fed information of why they were bad. When I would be like, I found this, then I would be praised. I'd be told I was doing a good job. Oh, now you're understanding, you're getting it. Like there was a lot of this, I would say, grooming going on, whether known or unknown, it was happening. And I did that for about a month and a half. And then I just started to feel horrible, like during that time, like very dark energy around that. I believed I was doing something good, that I was somehow protecting good people from bad people, but I started to get paranoid as a person in general. Like you know how it is, like when you get stuck in a thought process, it's really dark, it starts to overtake you a little bit. Like that started happening to me. And I was just like, this isn't good. Like, this is bad energy. I can't do this anymore. Well, then I started learning more things. For example, the billboard situation. I make a friend in Arizona, and her and I started to make friends in other states just by happenstance. And it's kind of like divine and beautiful when I look back on how it happened, because the information that I've come to know now was nothing I could have found on my own. It's almost like God put specific people in my life for a time, so that I could get a clearer picture of what was really happening in this community. So I meet this woman, um, because some money had been taken from me and told I would be paid back. It was like $400 by Tori's main admin. And then she got mad when I asked for it because it was supposed to be like temporary. I'll get you right back. Just cover this thing, kind of a thing. Well, I wasn't getting help from her. So I reached out to the state that I gave the money to, and found this woman who started talking to me. She's like, can you talk? And I'm like, yeah. So we get on the phone and we're talking about everything that's going on. And we're starting to realize our stories, like that we've been told, don't line up. So we were told with the billboard thing that we were locked into $20,000, but we needed to give our 4,000 to Arizona for a billboard for them. And that it was for some Mike Lindell event. And basically, Mike Lindell was paying for the first truck for the first day. And we were just going to give our money to Arizona. And then they would get 2 more trucks. And eventually, the rest of the country would help pay us our debt. And then California would get a billboard back out of it. And so this is a story we were told. And I believed it. And we asked California if that's okay with them. They were like, fine, as long as it's going to a good thing. A couple people were upset, but that's where it was. And then I talked to her and she was like, we never had billboards. I'm like, what do you mean? Back up. Before I talked to her. So one of the main admins of Tori's said, you have to pay, I'm on the phone with the company. I want to get this money to Arizona, but they won't do it until we pay off the final amount. So we all need to pay off the $20,000 before we can get 2 billboards to that thing that's happening like tomorrow. It was always like a big hurry. Well, a couple of us in the admin group were like, fuck that. Leave that person with their debt. If they signed us into a $20,000 contract, we're not going to pay for it. Like, not another person needs to spend $1 on this situation. He made a mistake and he has to live with it. And as soon as we said that we wouldn't give any more money and we wouldn't support it, then her main admin was like, well, hold on, let me make a call. Calls us right back saying, you know what? I told the billboard company, like I talked them out of it. So like 5 minutes ago, they wouldn't budge and we owed the 20 grand. When we don't want to give you any more money, fast forward 5 minutes later, now they're fine with it. And they're like, you know what? We'll just give you the trucks for the 4,000. We'll call it even. They're going to forgive us this contract money, if the contract ever truly existed with an actual company, not just friends of someone. Who fucking knows? The point is, this company's weird. It's all shady. They forgave us of all the debt and we're like, free and clear. We'll just give Arizona 2 trucks on the following days after the first day that Mike Lindell paid for. And so we're like, cool, it's over. Finally, we're free from this. $4,000. Yep, we got 2 trucks, billboard trucks in Arizona for something Mike Lindell's doing. Awesome. Well, come to find out after talking to my friend There was no truck sent the next 2 days. So the first day was paid for by Mike Lindell. Our $4,000 never went anywhere, but everyone believed it did. And I've never told this full story publicly. I've told a handful of people, but I've not told it publicly because I didn't want to just start a bunch more drama over shit that we can't control. Our money's gone. It is what it is. The point is, we were lied to. Whatever assumptions you would make from that story is probably the same assumptions I made, but I don't want to be sitting here in assumptions. I want to just say that that's one of the big red flags that happened early on, was this whole situation. So I'm starting to make friends. I'm starting to hear from other states similar things are going on. Starting to call out some of the stuff that's happening in our big admin chat, which was like people from all over the country. And then I'm getting demonized by Tori's two main admins. They won't talk to me. They won't answer my questions. They're treating me like absolute garbage. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? Just because I started prying a little into some things that were shady as fuck. Then they're telling me they rushed me. They made a mistake by making me admin. I wasn't good for this position, da, da, da. I'm like, okay, well, then I noticed the free speech is still on hold. I'm realizing that my spying on people was so wrong. I start to feel really bad about participating because now I'm seeing the problem is coming from the top. And now I don't trust the things I've been told about the people in the room. And I'm like, what are you involved in right now? And then I see the free speech tighten up even more. People aren't allowed to talk about news. They're only allowed to talk about like Tori's call to action and like a handful of other very specific things, but it's so tight and suffocating. You're not allowed to post something from another channel. You have to remove the fact that it came from this channel from everything and just post it bare. So there's no sources that people can trace back. It's like, we can't link anything to any other patriot or anyone else doing anything good. It has to only just be raw data. And we're not allowed. Then I noticed we weren't allowed to share the news anymore, even California news. And this was just a random rule someone made up on the spot. And I'm like, what? I pushed back on this and was told basically that I didn't know what I was talking about. And I wasn't focusing on what I should be focusing on. And so I left. I left the room. I didn't want to be a part of it. I didn't want to be a part of enforcing these rules. I didn't feel it was right. I didn't trust the people at the top closest to Tori because they were the ones imposing this bullshit in our rooms. I had seen them take simple calls to action from her shows and delay them and confuse them and tell the admins, don't put anything out until I tell you what to do. And this wasn't coming from Tori. This was coming from people that was in her sphere that were lording over our staterooms. And I was like, this is unproductive. This is lies. This is shady. And it's censorship worse than I'm seeing on Instagram or Facebook or in the world. Like, this is ridiculous. So I leave. I take some time away. In that time, a lot goes on. Up until this point, I hadn't been super attacked publicly on in the Telegram spaces, but I was getting like nasty stuff in my DMs. So the one woman who was closest to Tori at the time, when I left and stepped down as admin, she DMs me just forgotten. I don't know if that was like, you're forgotten forever. It's meant to be salt in a wound. I really don't know. I tried to make things like okay with her at one point and she ignored it. It's just nasty shit like that. The second I stepped down as admin, they blocked my account from Tori's chat, her main chat where everyone is. And I was just like, what the fuck? Just because I stepped down as admin. And they were very happy about it. So some stuff transpires, and I'm trying to move this along. I know it's a lot of getting into the weeds, but the reason I'm sharing this is because there's people who are listening to this specifically from the community, and I did feel it necessary to do the service of at least sharing my full story with those people who do understand it. So if you're not from that community and you're bored with this, I apologize, but it does have a purpose. So I end up going back because on one of Tori's shows, she talks about you don't just give up. And it was shortly after I left. It was like, you don't just give up when it gets hard. You just keep going. And it really compelled me. And I was like, why did I just give up? Like I should have just stayed. Why did I let these people and these circumstances like get in the way of me fighting? So I ended up coming back a while later. I don't remember how long in between my break, and telling everyone in the room, listen, I'm sorry. I should have fought harder. I saw things I didn't like, but I'm here now. And I, before that, had made a lot of apologies via DM to the people that I was sussing out and attacking. Like, I went on a whole apology tour privately. Like, dude, I'm so fucking sorry I treated you that way. I don't know you at all. I don't know you at all. I just believe what I was told. And I became like this person who was suspect of you. And like, I'm so sorry. And people were so gracious and kind. Not a single person was like, held it against me or anything. And some are my dear friends at this point in life. So I'm very grateful for all of that. But I go back in, kind of own my shit, all is well. I'm there. I'm watching right after someone got chosen to be admin who is, I don't know who this person is. They don't live in California, or they didn't at the time. I don't know. And they're literally a terrorist in our room, just spreading mad lies. And this is where the lies began. Against me, against a lot of people. They had been happening for a while, but against me personally. I was called, if I would speak out against these people, I was called trying to think, I was staging a coup. That's all I know. I was staging a coup. I was, I can't even remember all the things. I wish I saved the screenshots. They're so fucking ridiculous. I've been accused of stealing data, of all kinds of shit. I can't even remember. The funniest one, the stupidest one, was I was accused of having an affair with an admin and getting busted by my lover, which is my boyfriend, Nico, which is really funny because if I had an affair with anyone, he would just be like, bye, bitch. And so I told him, I was like, did you see that you busted me, lover, when I was having an affair? I'm just saying, I'm just giving you an idea of like the ridiculousness of the range of lies. Like at this point, it comes very clear that it's not really about the lie. It's just about public perception. So these lies get told in grandeur with many, many words in public spaces. So either in the chat with 20,000 people or in our stateroom, which had, give or take, somewhere between 400 and 600 people. And these horrible lies. And then you're in a position where how do you defend yourself against lies for one? Like if someone's like, you murdered that person, how do you prove that you didn't do something you didn't do? There's no evidence for, you know what I mean? It's just, it got really weird and creepy. And I didn't defend myself against any of this shit because it's ridiculous. And I started to see that these attacks were coming in groups of threes oftentimes. And it was a lot of times the same people. And if some of those people or accounts would leave, then another third person would just fill in their spot randomly to like attack. And it was always like, I just saw it as like three little dogs, like all around you, like yippee, yippee, yippee dogs, just trying to destroy your character or put out this narrative about you. And they would say your name a lot, like Ashley Joe, because my handle is Ashley Joe there. And it's like Ashley Joe did this and Ashley Joe did that. And Ashley Joe is a narcissist and she's a this and Ashley Joe. So the repetitive thing about the name is like they're literally, I started to realize, trying to get people to associate seeing your name with bad. It's a mind control fucking thing. And so I started seeing this happening over and over towards me. It was just constant. I don't know if it's because I knew too much information and they were like, we have to make sure that people don't trust her or listen to her, or they think she's bad, or they're afraid to talk to her. So we're just going to do this so that people stay away from her, because if they talk to her, some of the truth might come out. Either way, it's going on for a while. And this whole thing is just a total mess. I understand how you're probably thinking and feeling right now if you're like, why the fuck are you still there? At this point, things were happening on a level. Not massively, but some things were happening. And there's a lot of really good people there. a lot of really good people that I'm starting to build relationships with, that I'm starting to really like and love. And we're trying our damnness to get shit done in our state, regardless of this bullshit. But this is what we're up against the whole time. So I'm really frustrated with Tori because all of the admins and the people that she selects over her chats at this point are, I'd say, 90% trash. I will go back real quick. When I was initially an admin, the fourth admin that we were with, the man, we were told really quickly that he was not trustworthy. So we created a secret chat without him. So that's worth noting if he's listening. I've never told you that that happened, but we had an admin chat without you in it, which I'm sure you're aware that that still happens and may be in those now. But you were the one that was deemed to be the bad one, just so you know. It's worth noting. So anyway, this situation of mistrust and craziness is happening, and I'm pissed at Tori. I'm like, dude, you're just surrounding yourself with horrible people who literally berate people. They jump on them. If you're in her main chat and you bring up a question that challenges Tori on any level, you are attacked. You're not just attacked for what you said, but like called names, lied about. They just want to get rid of you immediately. There's no discourse really allowed in that space to challenge ideas, thoughts, or to bring new ideas. It's literally this protective thing over Tori. Her admins always have had in common. It's like, no, we need to keep her protected at all costs. And if you don't just love her and blindly follow everything she says, if you question everything or anything, then you're out. And we're going to treat you like shit until you leave, or we're going to ban you. So this is going on this whole time. And I'm just like, damn, this place is really toxic. I'm still trying to get things done. And I'm also, because of the nature of her shows, she would see the drama happening. And then after big fights in California or whatever, she would do a show essentially saying, don't get in their way when they're pulling their pants down. Like, let them, which is ironic because everyone in who's fighting with each other thinks that applies to the person they're not. So you're watching her messages be so vague when she would time them after fights that everyone felt confident that they were on the right side of the fight. I've been on both sides of the fight, and I always thought that I was the good guy, and so does everybody else. And that's where it gets really fucking weird, and it just perpetuates this thing. So as it's happening, you're thinking that she's this mastermind who is literally giving us this trash situation where good people are getting removed, censored, silenced, lied about. She's making you think it's this incredible masterclass experience that has some deeper lesson. While this is happening in the rooms, we're seeing in all states, at least most, I would say, we're seeing a small majority of people at the top, self-appointed leaders, get together and put out work and decide that they will shit on anyone else's work that's trying to do things. We're seeing them create, in our room specifically, there was a legal room created for lawsuit stuff, and the person who created the room and protected the information kicked out my boyfriend, my extremely intelligent, highly qualified friend, and my other extremely intelligent, highly qualified friend, one of which who helped on multiple lawsuits, wrote her own, and worked on a SCOTUS case. The other who has represented herself in the past in court and won. So these people are getting removed from the legal room, some of the brightest, and they're just a few of the many that were removed. And the people who are remaining are the ones who don't know as much or don't challenge the people in charge. And then the product is always the same small, very clicky handful of people put out their product and shit on everyone else's work, and then beg Tori for recognition by reposting their accomplishments over and over and over in the room, in the main chat, tagging her so that she says their name. And then they forward when she says their name into California every time she does it, so that you always know who's the person who's getting shit done. These are your leaders. These are the so-called leaders in these spaces, the people who push everyone out, who work privately in their cliques, who shit on everyone else's work and beg like a dog for recognition from Mama Tori. It's frustrating. I tried it. I tried to work in spite of it. Tori comes in to California after enough people are raising shit in her entire community about her admins. Too much is coming to light that can be ignored. It just can't be ignored at this point. So she schedules a call with all the states. She comes into California to do a voice call with us, like a live voice chat where we're talking to her. Did you see that? It was crazy. Something flew across the screen. Anyway, I saw it in the camera. So she comes in to do this voice call with California, and she had removed every single admin. I don't know from how many states, but definitely from our state, who had lost complete control at this point. They were super tyrannical, totally imploding, like nobody liked them. She removed all of them and tells our room that it was our fault for allowing tyranny to run our state. She said, these are not my rooms. You created them. I didn't. When my admins came in and took control, you let them. Some people didn't let them. This should show you how quickly tyranny enters in. And I'm like, damn. I mean, that was like a year of bullshit for this one moment lesson. But I wasn't really frustrated about that. I was just like so grateful that she was finally helping, that I was like, damn straight, we should have fought them. Why didn't we? And I'm thinking we're really getting the matrix broke in our mind of powerlessness. Like we're now starting to realize, dude, why do you let your government do this shit? You know what I mean? Like we need to get out of this small-minded mentality that we're helpless, and we need to say, fuck you. You're not getting away with that. And I was like, that was a really cool lesson. So I'm like, that's amazing. She tells us that she's going to hold elections, and we, the people, will choose who our admins are. And the admins should never be banning unless it's a bot or someone just posting a bunch of spam. She was like, the only job of the admin is essentially to help people, period. And not to impose what they're supposed to be doing, not to tell them what they're going to be working on, nothing. Your only job is to do what they want you to do. And I was like, speaking my language, this is beautiful. She is breaking up this power structure bullshit. Wow, that call was so amazing. I vowed that I would never be admin again. And then that call, and it lit a fire under me of passion. I was like, damn, like this is all I wanted to hear for so long. Because I didn't trust my gut the whole time I'm seeing this bullshit happening. I'm like, well, they're close to Tori, so therefore they are trustworthy on some level. And I made that mistake for too long. And this time I was like, I need to trust myself always, which is another beautiful lesson that she constantly reinforces. So she decides we're going to have an election. People nominate one another. Someone nominated me, and I was like, you know what? All right, fine. I will throw my name on the list. So we nominate, we end up voting for 7 admins, and I'm thinking, here we go. We have a fresh start. And you could already tell the effects of her call. People were way more comfortable sharing. They felt like they could use their voice again. A lot of the spell of the like control energy was broken, and you could see life was being breathed back into that space. So we finally get ourselves in this position. There's 7 of us. We get in a room. 7 California admins, brand new everything, ready to go and get shit done again. And the tyranny starts to creep in initially, like immediately. And we're in this room with these people, and I'm watching them want to make all these decisions for others in the room. They want to decide things like who can be banned, who can't be banned, how the rooms are broken up, how the community rooms are run. Like they want to have eyes in all the places and just weird, creepy overlord shit. And I start noticing immediately, like, you guys just want to go back to the old way. We just got freed from it. Like, what the fuck, you know? So I started speaking out, not just myself, but I'm gonna just say my side of this. And they wanted to keep, so we had 1,400 people banned. We had 400 and some in our room. They wanted to pick and choose who they would get to keep banned. And I'm like, well, we don't have rules now and we don't have this structure. So everyone should be free. We should lift the ban. Some of them didn't want to do that. Others were okay with it. I said, I'm doing it anyway, because you don't get to decide. These people were removed for reasons that no longer apply because we don't have those same stupid rules in place. And it was a big thing. They wanted to vote immediately for the most important person in the room. I refused to play that game either because there was no point. We were told you have one accountable person from each state will go into a room and they'll do the banning. And if they over abuse their power, then they'll be held accountable by these people in this room. Well, they wanted to pick the person, but the accountability room wasn't created. And I said, until there's a room where you could be held accountable, I'm not going to willingly hand you more power, because if you abuse it, there's no one to advocate for the people that you're banning. So I refused to vote. We didn't get enough votes to pass that. So we had no one in charge. It was fine. We never had a person who had extra power or anything. We just went on as we did. Went ahead and unbanned everyone on the 4th of July last year. It was really a beautiful experience. A couple of us did it together and we opened the room. Within 5 months, we had about a little over 200 new people join. We're starting to grow again where we were always diminishing. Freedom is in the room, and it wasn't easy to maintain. There was a lot of bullshit on the back end that we had to kind of get in the way of happening, where that tyranny and those little rules and the controlling the people was trying to creep in, but we kept fighting the good fight. And I knew it was something I just wanted to set a precedent. I didn't want to do this for long. I just wanted to commit long enough to show that another way is possible, because the people needed some breathing room. We needed a fucking break from other adults lording over us. So we're growing. We're doing pretty good. We're starting to get some momentum. One of the things that one of the people tried to do was, so the idea was put out that we should have, that this main room was just kind of where we hang out, but the real work and the real relationship building happens locally. So the idea was, in one of our initial Zooms, that people wanted to have local groups and stuff. And so this one person in charge, who was also the billboard person, ironically, had the idea to set up his own channels within our channel, offshoot of our channel, so that basically we would all see everybody's shit and their groups and their private stuff. And I saw what he was doing. He did it before, and it's not good. It basically kept everyone in the same space, only just caused more confusion. And also, he could watch over it all and see what everyone was talking about. And I'm like, that's super fucking creepy, dude. So I took that from him and I created a new room. And before he got a chance to get his grubby little fingers on it and control the people, I just said, hey, you want a group in your area? Start it. You want to share it? Put the link here, or say who to get a hold of to get in the group. Boom, done. We had like 12 groups started in a few months of local communities where people are growing, where the overlord admins can't watch over the conversations, where work's getting done, where people are meeting in person. It just kept happening. And then our room is becoming less relevant, which is beautiful, because people are taking this into real life. Just like Tori talked about on her call. She discussed, like, meet here and then decentralize. Go find your communities because those are the people that are going to be there for you when you need someone. You need to know where they live, what their phone number is, like people you look in the eye and hug and you know they're a real person. That was always the goal, and I loved that. So that starts happening. All these beautiful things are happening. And then things are going okay. I'm ready to get out of there at this point. The back end stuff with the admins gets real fucking weird, and it never stops being weird for me. There's admins in the California room who are conversing with people, admins of other states, and Tori's main admins, and they're creating these narratives around people like me. I was a big target of one. I still am. Basically, I think it's because I stood for free speech in California and for the will of the people, and I didn't let these people do what they wanted to do with their power. So I was always a threat to them. So they're just building narratives or doing things. My name is randomly just getting dropped in the main chat. And I wasn't even in the main chat at this point, but people would tell me and DM me and text me like, "Do you see what so-and-so said about you all of a sudden?" And I'm just like, oh my God, they won't stop talking about me. All I'm trying to do is hold a space and not let people fuck with other people in my room. But I was clearly a threat. Anyone who stands up for freedom of speech and the people is a threat to people who are obsessed with power and probably more nefarious things. So that kept going on. I'm speaking out against it. Yeah, without going into detail, I don't even remember the last couple of weeks. It's been such a haze, but Tori decided, I don't know what happened. So Tori tells one of her admins that everyone in the stateroom is going to be removed if they don't join her main chat. And her main chat is just, it's a mess of fuckery. It's where her appointed admins have all this control. It's the place I told you about earlier where they would go in threes and attack anyone who dissented or had a question or disagreed with Tori, of all things. God forbid. God forbid you have your own thought and it's not 100% lockstep with the group think. You're attacked, you're banned, all of these things. So she reposts something from a admin saying everyone has to join her chat by the 9th or we're going to ban you from the staterooms. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? So couple things. One, her admins ban whoever they want and they don't have to give a reason, and they're not elected, they're appointed by her. If they ban someone from the main chat who happens to live in California and be an active member in our state group, then that person will get removed by our shitty, tyrannical admins from California because they're rule followers. They're just doing their job, or they just don't like that person. That's not okay. Now you're saying, okay, first it's our state. You don't run them. You don't interfere with them. We're supposed to fight tyranny so that the banning and the censorship doesn't happen anymore. But now you're putting our states and every individual member of our state in the hands of non-elected main chat admins who have a history of treating people like shit and banning them without explanation. So everything you said was bullshit about not interfering with our staterooms. When some people are like, well, she reposted that someone said it. Maybe she's not actually saying it. Maybe whatever. This is how the community works. Everything is up for interpretation. And if she's wrong about something, she just tells you it's your fault later. The point is, she pushes a button that causes an incredible amount of chaos and confusion and doesn't explain it properly. Many people asked her why. Explain to us why we have to join this chat to work with our fellow neighbors in our own state. Please tell us why. She wouldn't give an answer. In the meantime, the admins are planning to ban. They're all excited, like, oh, we got the power again, guys. And they start telling everyone, yeah, by the 9th, and we're going to start banning you. And just so you know, just comply. They were literally saying words like, just comply. How hard is it to comply? Are you questioning Tori? All the shit that got us in this room was being told that kind of bullshit by the government and not being okay with it. And here we are, literally lockstep with the fucking government in the way that they're acting. And I'm like, this is really happening right now. What the fuck? So I'm like, I'm not banning anyone. I don't give a shit what Tori says. Period. I'm not going to ban people. I'm not going to tell people they can't be a part of their community because they don't join a chat on Telegram. People that I've seen do work. That's nonsensical to my brain. Why would I do that? I don't blindly trust Tori that much, period. I know it's wrong. Simple. So I make it clear I'm not going to ban. Another person makes it clear she's not going to ban. This is met with scrutiny by a couple people, obviously, in multiple places. They're attacking me for this. And I'm like, it is what it is. And what's right is right. What's wrong is wrong. For me, it's wrong. I have to sleep at night. I can't do shit like that to people. What happened to where we go one, we go all? I knew people who were going to get removed from California because they weren't in the main chat and they weren't allowed back in and they didn't know why. And so I'm like, no, I won't do this to a person. Then Tori comes in and removes me as admin of California without explanation, by the way. So I go to pin something in the morning and I'm like, I can't pin it. And I'm like, oh, I'm not admin. What happened? No explanation. She demoted me. I'm not sure why. Probably because I was saying that I wouldn't ban people. And I was kind of like, that's okay. Like, there was a huge sense of relief because I felt that I was just in this space holding back the waters of tyranny within this space. But that's all I was doing. I was still sending emails and doing calls to action and stuff like that. But like so much of my energy and attention had veered away from my life, my country, and what's going on into this never ending cycle of these people who sit around and constantly talk about people, discredit them, lie about them, spy on them. Like I'm just like basically holding one arm out, trying to keep them from the members of the state, to not let them have power just for long enough for people to see what it felt like to have an open space, knowing that they would always come, but I wanted to give a window in time where they could see how it could be done as an admin for the next person to get in that position. You don't have to comply with the shit just because you're in an admin club now. You can stand on your own. You can be brave. You can be courageous. You can go against the grain. You can bring transparency, even though your admins are going to be having secret conversations. You don't have to play along. You can be your own person. I wanted to set an example of it. So she removes me, doesn't explain it, of course, because everything's cryptic. And to just tell someone what's going on would be a little too helpful. I don't know. It's very scapegoaty in my opinion. But the cool thing is she never removes people. Like it's very rare. I was lucky that I put myself in a position where the only person who could have banned me was her because I refused to be in her main chat. So her admins couldn't do it for her. So I feel like I forced her to show her hand. I was pretty sad that day. I was like relieved, but I was also sad because I just like abruptly it ended. I gave like so much of my life to this community. I helped in so many different ways. And like all of a sudden it was like for no reason, okay, bye, almost like the previous admin, forgotten. That's how I just felt like trash thrown out, I guess. And then I also knew that act without explanation, everyone's going to assume that I'm bad because there is a mentality of worshiping her in this place. Like what she says is gold. And I'm not saying everyone in the community feels this way. There are some people who still can disagree with her and look at her very critically, but there is many people who take her word as gold and Bible. And essentially, if Tori said, then it must be true. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to try to put it together in my mind. She said it. So I also knew, like, damn, the perception of me is going to be I'm the bad one. And also, even more scary is the perception of those assholes who want to control everyone's words and actions and all of that shit. They're going to be deemed as on the right track. So for someone who's not really good at free thinking, who's a good follower, they're going to think that that's the way that you get approval in this community, is by treating people like shit and following orders. And I'm like, it's a really bad message to send. So it just made me sad. Like, it was very sad. And yeah, just bummed. And then taking a bath, just kind of fucking bummed. Like, what the hell just happened? I left the room entirely because I'm like, I'm done with this psyop. I had known Telegram was a fucking maze and a psyop and a yarn ball clusterfuck for a while. But like I said, I was just trying to fulfill my commitment in this small window of time before I left on my terms. So I left because my commitment was no longer there. And I'm in the bath and I text my mom. Like, my mom's always known all the stories about this. She's always been so excited for the day that I broke free from this community. And I just text her. I was like, dude, I'm so fucking sad. She calls me and she said some things that were so powerful and so obvious, but that I needed to hear in the moment, that totally broke me out of everything. And I was just kind of reliving some of it and telling her, and she goes, look at you being too free and shit for Tori. And I was like, yeah, like, pretty much. I've always been too free for every single group dynamic I've ever been in that was controlled in any way. But then she said, you played her at her own game and you won. And some people listening to this are going to think that's a very arrogant statement, those from the community. But it clicked that she was right for me. Because every single challenge that was put our way, every single thing that happened, I pushed back to see the validity of it. I was essentially testing every foundation, every wall, to make sure that it was sound, to make sure that it was solid. I was like, if this is a place of freedom and the incredible things I'm learning from your show is how you actually believe, then I can literally stand in this space and be completely free, and you will not come after me for it. And in the end, it will reign true, just like in our country. It's the same way I am on every platform. On Instagram, I will not bend because I'm not supposed to say COVID. I'm not going to cross out letters and words and censor myself ever. I'm going to say fucking COVID. I'm going to say vaccine. I'm going to say all this shit. And Instagram can suck a big fat. You know what I mean? That's my morals. I'm not going to bend. I'm not going to bend due to manipulation, intimidation, subtleties of messaging, cryptic bullshit messaging, none of it. I know what's right and wrong in my heart. And where at first, when I found this community, I set that aside temporarily because I was being loved and encouraged towards being a nasty person. But that only lasted a couple months. I learned from it, and I vowed that I would never return to putting aside my beliefs and my morals for any other person, or being a part of any clique or any friend group or anything. So essentially, everything that she says is beautiful. Everything she says is valuable and meaningful, and has altered my life for the better in so many ways. There's so many lessons that God has used through the vessel of Tori to help me grow as a person. But when push came to shove, when it was go time to show yourself in the heat of things, when it came down to very essential and fundamental beliefs like freedom of speech and censorship, when push came to shove, I stood my ground and she had to show her hand. Proving not only did she interfere with our room, which she said she didn't do, She overrode the voice of everyone in that room who elected me, which is more important than me being gone. It's essentially, I don't know how many people put this together in the room, but their vote means nothing. And I can't even laugh at the blatant irony of that, given what we're fighting for right now. So after my mom said that, it occurred to me, I didn't change, she did. And only did she not, she changed, or did she? Maybe she showed herself because I just wouldn't go away, because I just wouldn't give in. I don't know, but it broke something free for me that just kept getting broken open. The days that followed, I feel like that day and the following day it's like God took my hand and took me through a movie reel of my entire experience with her. And I saw it was like he was showing me, like I'm watching it like zoom by like a movie reel, and then pop something, an image would pop up in a moment. And I would remember a red flag moment where something felt wrong in my spirit and I ignored it. And then the reel would keep going, and another memory and another memory and another memory. And I was like so free feeling, watching all of these things that I made fit that never belonged because I had to make them fit, rather than say that maybe she was wrong, or at times, if not overall, has an intention in this place that is not what she says it is. Once I included those thoughts in the conversation, all the memories came around. And then all the times that I felt confused, they weren't confusing once I put together that maybe this isn't what I thought it was. So this part, let me check the time. Okay, I'm going to take a break and then I'm going to come back for this next part because I'm going to need a minute. Up until now, I'm just sharing experiences, but I'm about to share from my heart what I think. And this is the part that people are going to have a problem with. And I understand why, because I was you a month ago. But I have to share all my thoughts. So it shouldn't be much longer after this, but I'm going to take a quick break and I will be back.